And share again. Hi guys, so this is not a typical knowledge up because I'm going to jump in and tell you how I prioritize projects. All the time I'm asked a number of times how to prioritize. OwnersUP members are like, I have so many goals, how do I prioritize things? So I'm going to go through a system I go through every time I have an idea, and I go through this list every week. So let's start off with, first thing you do is you kind of brain dump everything that you have on your to-do list and your projects. So for example, I know right now we have Juliana and Dan, and you guys are like scaling your companies very quickly. So you probably have tons of projects, and sometimes when it's in your head, you're like, I have so many things. And then when you put them down, you're like, oh, actually this is kind of feasible. I can get this done probably in less than 2 months. But the thing is, since it's in our head, it seems like it's like a year's worth of projects. I just did this yesterday and I was like, oh, I thought I had a year's worth of all these projects I would never get to. And then I was like, oh, this can all get done by the end of this month. Have you guys ever experienced that? So what we do is you list down all your projects. Just fill out this column and think of every single thing you want to get done. So it could be video content. We were just talking about that. Or a Facebook marketing funnel. So continue going through that. And the next thing you want to do is, what's your ideal project? Like, what's that outcome? And it has to be measurable. So for example, I want to make a differentiator here, like onboarding. So instead of writing, my ideal outcome is every member understands how to use OwnersUP. No, that's not measurable. That's kind of like, why would I prioritize that? Instead, I want to increase my retention, my lifetime value by 7 months. So there's a big difference. So it helps you kind of think about, is this project worth it based on numbers? So Facebook funnel is like, oh, it's about how many prospects you want to get and and then if you're going to say like, oh, I need to optimize my Facebook funnel, but then you have to think about, what is that conversion? Video content, it's not, oh, I just want to have thought leadership. Great. What's that thought leadership going to do for you? So you want to get measurable. So in video content, you can say, I wanted to have shared this much, or I want to have these many prospects. Because even if you're thought leadership, you should be getting prospects. So the next thing you want to do is, until you get it done, you need to know the estimated hours. And I don't know, have you guys ever sat down and thought, oh, I'll just do onboarding. This just happened to me recently. All my onboarding is completely done. And I was like, oh, this should only take 3 hours, right? To optimize this. This is no big deal. And when I sat down, since I didn't think it all out, it actually took literally like 9 hours. I had to document everything. I realized, oh my God, even though it's all done, I did not document it and put it in one system. And from there, I had to say, okay, well, what's working, what's not working? And it really took longer. So that's why this is super important, to actually take the time to kind of download everything, in the sense of like, not just brain dump everything in your head, and then realistically think how many estimated hours, so you can put in your calendar and not set unrealistic goals to get it complete. Next thing is, list all the resources you need. So in this case, onboarding, I realized, oh, even though we're using Intercom, we need a whole other platform to make it much more engaging. So now I had to decide, okay, what is it exactly, the platform I wanted to use? And then who was going to implement that? Who do I have to hire to get that going? All of these thoughts as you're kind of going like, oh, this project's bigger than what I thought. Next step is actions to take. So this allows you to get right into action. And then from there, because you wrote down all those actions, you're able to say, what is the effort? So if it's going to be hard, like it's going to take you a lot of work, you're going to put 1. If it's easy, you're going to put 5. And then impact, if it's going to be a huge difference on your revenue and your business, you're going to put 5. So it's a huge impact. If it's not, you're going to put low. Then we have this where it adds up, and based on the highest number, that's what you're going to prioritize to get the best return on your time. So any questions, guys? I'll unmute you if you have questions.
Yeah, so you had mentioned projects and tasks, right, to put in here. Now, how do you really differentiate, like, okay, like, is this really worth, because I mean, certain tasks, especially if they're repeatable, I don't feel like they really belong here. So like, you know, like I'm not going to take all of my like project manager and put it in here to prioritize. I feel like this is really to move the business forward. So how do I identify those things that I'm actually going to put in here as a task or project?
So this is more of before you put it into your project management. Right? So this is because sometimes when I've done this, I'm guilty of this, where I put this on my project management, I didn't go through all the details. So instead, it gives you a whole glimpse, because when you're putting something in your project management, you're just putting that one project, but you're not really looking at, okay, is this the project I want to do for this month? And how does it actually align with everything else I'm doing? So this is the first draft before you put it into your project management. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit, right? So, because I'm thinking, right, like, because usually I'll have like a dump of like things that like I would like to do. Like, here's goals, because I get overwhelmed and I'm like, I have to kind of prioritize like what's going to get done. So this is like a good place to filter that and really see what's necessary, I think. And I guess the other question is, how do we?
Well, actually, right there, the to-do list. I'm so guilty of this. Sometimes I put it on paper. It's terrible. But the thing is, it's just like a little, like one of them right now says lead magnet. What does lead magnet really mean? It doesn't tell you the resources, doesn't tell you hours, doesn't tell you time. But what it does, it kind of leaves me in this like, oh my God, lead magnet. How long is it going to take me? Right? So I need to actually put it here to kind of compare like, okay, what is it really going to take me? And how does it compare to everything else on my huge to-do list? I don't know, do you carry paper too? All right. Samir, anybody have any questions? Oh, let me unmute you, Dan. Okay, Dan. You had birds chirping.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, cool. Yeah. So just, I mean, all this makes sense. There's two quick questions I had in regards to one, where it says actions to take. Should we put, it's basically saying put the sub steps, like the mini tasks associated with completing that project, basically? Is that
yes.
supposed to go there? Got it. And then
the reason why I have the actions here, before I never had that column, but the reason is sometimes, and when we worked this through with Samir, when he didn't write all the actions, then he was like, oh, the effort is like easy. But when you write down all the actions, you're like, oh, not so easy.
Yeah. True. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, that's because I do like a basic version right now with sticky notes where I write down like the subtasks, and that seems to work pretty well. But I'm trying to also figure out in terms of the prioritize part, like would that just be like ranked like from number 1 to 2 to 3 type of deal? Is that supposed to be like a matrix for that? And then it adds up all the numbers.
Mm-hmm. And then it prioritizes it, so then you can decide. Then you can just be like, oh, well, this is the best return on my investment. I should prioritize this.
What's the difference between projects and goals?
Ah, good question.
Yeah, it's actually a good question.
That's a great. So in the end, a project is something you want to get accomplished. I like to think of it as like, in a sense, when we write to-do lists, most of the time, I think we write projects on our to-do lists, or at least for me. Like a lead magnet seems like a to-do, but it's freaking a project. So if I showed you my to-do list, it's projects. Now the goal is to actually get this executed and get it done. So I used to have this say goal prioritization, but I realized actually it says marketing prioritization. That's great. But usually it says project prioritization, because I do this for marketing too. And in this case, let me just mute you again, Dan. The birds are chirping, are beautiful, but not right now. So I would say this is a project, and the goal is getting it completed.
So what's the difference between a project and a goal?
A goal is a theme of the month. So what I would say is like, okay, this month is all for me about marketing automation. So my goal is to get everything completed, and then there are going to be sub-projects to that. So each of these are projects. So like, for example, mine right now.
Pretty much a chunk of projects.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so one thing I just want to tell you guys, my system of doing this, I spend every Sunday trying to get all the to-do list and brain dumping it in here. So then I list all my projects and I'm like, all right, am I actually spending the right time this month in the projects I need to get done? And the reason why I do this every Sunday is, like I said again, and I keep stressing this, it goes in my head and then it just stresses me out. Like I don't have capacity to be creative. I'm like, oh my God, this lead magnet, how long is it gonna take? And sometimes I make it bigger than it seems to be. And then once I get it done, I was like, oh my God, that was just an hour. Or sometimes it's like really small and it could have just got it done like that.
How do we integrate like this? Because the other chart that you showed me, I really don't understand either, which was the like which ones we need to be doing versus we need to be outsourcing. So how does that fall into this? Like, should that be done before this, or should this lead to that? Like, should I do
this one,
dump this out, and then
what the one that you have, the one he's talking about is kind of seeing what are the tasks that you're not excited about in your jobs, and then outsourcing that, right? So in that case, those are just regular weekly or monthly tasks that you end up doing. That's the first thing. You just kind of want to outsource. Like, for example, for me, immediately I outsource bookkeeping. I don't get like excited about bookkeeping and reconciling. So that's one thing I get done. Another one is like just certain emails and reminders, all that gets set up. A lot of business owners are still doing that. So that's why you want to go through that exercise first. Now, after
that first and then do this.
Yes. Now, this is just a regular weekly thing. So let's say, for example, with onboarding, I realized, I need somebody who's in Active, because I use Active Campaign to set up the automations I have laid out. So that's when I was like, okay, I need that. And so now the actions I'm going to take is hire somebody for that. But the first sheet is just to get rid of all these tasks that are taking you time that aren't bringing you happiness. I know in my first company, I used to actually reconcile my books, and I was so grumpy afterwards, and I didn't realize a pattern. Any other questions?
How can we hook this up to a calendar?
Well,
and what do you do for, like, I sit and I look at things like, where does, because, okay, I guess what you're saying is that if it's at the top of the list, because what I'll do is I'll ignore, I guess I just ignore everything, I guess.
So
like, I'll put my priorities together and I won't really do it. It'll sit at the top of my list, and then like there's these urgent things will come up and I'll be like, not major.
All right, I'm going to be straight with you. That's being a reactive entrepreneur.
Yep.
You want to be proactive. And I get it, because like sometimes your brain is like, they want to feel good. So like one thing I'm resisting is my second lead magnet, right? So if you send me anything, I will reply just so I can get that quick little high of completing it instead of doing my lead magnet. So instead I have to train myself of being like, okay, let me think this out. This isn't that bad. Get my lead magnet done, outsource what I don't want to get done. And then I feel happier because I completed it and it's not this big monster kind of like around me.
How can I get more of this? Because like I love this. I kind of built my own that I showed you that one time, kind of like this, and I'm gonna utilize all the different things that you added on there for sure. I'm now more concerned about like my daily being able to, because when on my Saturdays or on my Sundays when I'm organizing this stuff, it's like, oh yeah, boom, I'll do this then, I'll do this then, I'll do this then. And then those reactive things, like, even though they're not that reactive, like I can plan for them. You know what I mean? I know I want to be able to have an outlet of time because I want to be able to give my attention to some of those more urgent things. How do I build some sort of daily infrastructure? Because like I literally came in today a little late because I had to go get a car early this morning, and I just like sat in my desk for like 10 minutes with my daughter. I'm just like, okay, I didn't have anywhere to just dive into because I didn't have any really like daily routine. Sounds like a personal problem.
No. Actually, what happens to me, I don't know, I'm sure how many people are guilty of this. So they have a bunch of things to do, and then they spend their most creative, which is like known and like it's stated everywhere. Your first hour of like when you start business is your most creative. And then we utilize it trying to do our to-do list, going through our inbox. How many are guilty of that? Nobody? Juliana, you are a warrior. She's not guilty of it. I doubt it.
No.
Everyone's guilty of it.
I actually try to spend that time, if I can, writing.
So yeah, so it's a habit. She didn't have that in the beginning. Most people didn't have it in the beginning. It's just a habit. So the best thing to do, Samir, is at the end of the day, when you're doing your daily wrap up, you write down what you want to get accomplished for the next day. So then when you sit at your desk, you're like, this is what I'm going to get accomplished. So in the daily wrap-ups, what I've seen another member do is in the lessons, write down the big 3 things they want to get done.
I like that. I just, even though like we're doing really well, like, and things are, you know, going really good, I need to figure out what is lacking when it comes down to my sense of fulfillment to these tasks. Because I'm still doing a lot of shit. Like, I'm not just sitting on my ass all day, but when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then I just don't feel a sense of fulfillment with my work. And I just feel like, you know,
it's busy work.
Shit.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is block time, and it's all about how you word it. So like Juliana one time gave a great example of this, where like there's some things where I have a team of people that I have to actually go through their projects, right? They're waiting for me to do that. So hers is a little, I think she calls it like stop the bottleneck, right?
Oh, unclog the bottleneck.
Unclog the bottleneck, right? I put be efficient, and you just put the word of whatever inspires you, and you put it in your calendar. So instead of saying like look through management, project management, get back to people, like write something that excites you. For her, like unclogging the bottleneck is like urgency, right? And be more efficient. Like I'm like, okay, great, this is what I need to get done. And then you put all your tasks that you need to do, and you designate a time every week for that. So I try to do it Mondays and Fridays.
I like that.
Any other questions? Ask away, this is great. And I know, Juliana, you might have to hop off. Do you have any last questions?
Any last questions? Is there anything that you would not put on this sheet, right? Like any, you know, sort of like what doesn't belong here that we might mistake as a project or a task that we would want to prioritize?
So I only put the projects for my business. I don't do my habits on here. I don't do my personal stuff here. It's only my business. I don't put a task like, we'll use this example, email Samir back. That's not on here. So anything that like doesn't take me, I don't think is gonna take me more than less than an hour, I'm not gonna put in here.
Where do you put that?
That is just like I put it in the chunk of time that I need to get done in my calendar. So I try to put things in my calendar, and I'll like bucket it in like, okay, here are things I need to get done. So one of the things would be replying back to my members. And then I put all those emails that I need to get done, and then I just spend that hour and just block it and then reply back to the members. So small things, you don't need to really dive into it. You already know what you got to do. That was a great question.
It was. So your calendar, so you integrate essentially, if I'm thinking just in a Zapier mindset, like the actions to take based on the priorities is what would be transferred into my calendar. Exactly. And then my calendar would determine what I need to actually do. And then those little tasks like, oh, call, like I told Siri today, remind me at 8 a.m. to call my vendor about something, you know what I mean? And that popped up on my thing.
So then at that point right there, you would want to do all the calls. So then you're on the phone and calling. You know, in sales, like when you're in that mode of sales, you want to kind of like put them all together so you can continue that momentum.
I dig that.
And then the calendar, I am one of those nerdy people. And my friends are like, seriously? Where if you ask me to go to this, like, I don't know, grab a coffee, you will get a calendar invite. My sister gets a calendar invite. So if it doesn't exist in my calendar, I'll probably forget it.
Nice. I like that. What calendar do you use?
I use Google. I'm a big Google person. And
Here is some information about person.
Oh, that's great. I just got my phone going. The reason why I use Google is because I can have it on my phone. It gives me reminders and I can't stay away from it, right? Like it's everywhere. Samir, these are great questions. Keep going.
What's the meaning of life? No, I'm just playing.
Life.
Nah,
Yeah.
this is good though.
Do you have any questions? Did I mute you or unmute you? Where am I?
Hello.
Yes, I am muted.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I do have a question. I was muted. It's all good, but yeah, because these birds are pretty loud. Yeah, so my question was, in regards to these activities, I think this all makes sense, but like, do you have a system or a way to separate revenue generating activities versus like administrative or like non-revenue, I should say, generating activities
So
in the
perfect.
business?
So I always think that everything has to be measurable. So give me something that you think is admin so we can go through it.
Researching leads, for example, is in a way it is revenue generating, but not direct. Well, actually, let me give you a different example, like updating my website, or like fixing something on my website, something like that, or like that would be some administrative that I don't think is directly tied to like generating revenue.
Why would you update your website? What are you hoping to get out of that?
It'd either be, I mean, at this point, I'm not really doing much of that now, but like in the beginning, originally when I wanted to create one, which I did relatively quick using WordPress, like I wanted to have a professional online page that represents my business. And, but at the same time, there's two options I had, which is hire someone to do it or do it myself. The reason I did it myself is because at WordPress, it still took me like probably like 10 hours or so total.
Perfect. So let's go with that example, right? So the reason, if you build
I'm going through that right now myself, honestly.
Yeah, so if you build a new website, so let's say this is your first website. The reason why you're building it is so you can get, I spelled that wrong, but I'm not gonna correct it. So you can get prospects coming your way. So based on that, you're assuming that beyond not having a website, it would increase your like prospects by this many. So you would have to do an estimate, a percentage. Like, so let's say without a website, you were converting by talking to people. I'm gonna give it 10%. Now with a website where they can reference and testimonials, you're estimating it's gonna increase your conversion by 30%. See the difference there? Everything has to be measurable. Everything you have to do has to have an ROI.
Yeah, definitely, that makes sense.
So like, for example, right now we're doing our new website that's driving traffic is success.ownersup.com. So we already have a landing page, but we're optimizing it. By this, we're hoping to increase the conversion by minimum of 15%. So when I start looking at everything I do, onboarding is increase my lifetime value, and then I put a number by 6 months. So think of a task that's admin that I can like challenge me here.
Would
admin tasks?
Where does brainstorming go on this? Like, if you got to figure stuff out, like, cause I feel like I downplay how that might take. Cause like piggybacking off what he said about WordPress and just the website building, like I was like, okay, I added build my new website as a thing. I was trying to figure out like, okay, I did actually hire a guy, but at the same time, for me to even be able to explain to him what I wanted, I had to kind of dive in and learn WordPress for the first time. So like, where does that learning, where does that brainstorming and that just kind of like straight figuring out the platform, where does that come in at?
Right here. This is where you decide where you want to go.
Or is that an action? Is that an action for the project, or is that a project in itself? Oh, appreciate it.
This is like every Sunday you kind of think about this. Like, okay, you want to build a WordPress site, right? Optimize your current WordPress site. What are you hoping it's going to do? It's going to increase your sales by, and you're going to do a guess. Or you can put like the number of people that you're going to go by. So let's say it's like 15%. Now right here, you're going to start thinking about, wow, what do I really need to take? And you're going to say, I need to dive in. And as you're doing the resources and what actions you're going to take, then you decide if you want to outsource this or not.
And it could be a mixture of both too, right? Like I could half, like I could say, okay, I'm gonna spend 5 hours learning it and brainstorming and just figuring it out, building out my sitemap, and then I'm gonna outsource, you know, however much of that I can. And I'm gonna do what I can on the other end.
Yep. And this is, think of it like if I told you to, I've never cooked a Thanksgiving turkey. I don't know if you've cooked a Thanksgiving turkey, but most likely would be like, okay, Thanksgiving turkey now. What we're doing is, I guess, I'm just going to put 5 hours. And when it comes to that time, I'll make a list. That's what sometimes people who've never cooked have done, right? But instead, you're probably going to spend the time to be like planning it out. Like, okay, let me actually research. What do I need to make a turkey? Get the instructions, get everything done, estimate it, and then put it in my calendar.
I like that.
And I know that you're like artistic, and I know that Dan, you're into the arts too. Think of it as like when you're having a piece of paper and you're first drawing something before you give instructions to somebody else. So it's kind of your way to like do the brainstorming. This project right here, when you're doing this is your brainstorming. To know if you want to outsource, where your resources, and if you want to prioritize.
Where does the completed ones go?
Wherever your project management system is.
So I mean, like if you do video content, like once you've completed that, what do you do with it? Delete it?
Yes. I like to color it a different color, and then it gets completed, and then move it to another tab. So I like to see kind of like what I brainstormed before. They're great questions. Let me unmute you, Dan, if just in case you had something. It's so funny, you have like birds. I like live in a high rise and never hear birds.
Yeah. Well, the birds like to hang out at this specific tree, so I gotta be careful so I don't get pooped on. I think I should be good. Yeah. So no, this all makes sense actually. I think.
You're good to go.
Actually, yeah. Trying to think here. Yeah. So in terms of like these projects and everything, like how would you batch these out? Like is it like, let's say it takes estimated hours, you know, X, Y, like 10, right? Or 5 or whatever for each of these different tasks. Do you then just, like, when do you take the time to schedule that? Is it also on that Sunday, you put it in Google Calendar, and like maybe you have like a system where like, all right, you color code it, like different activities, something like that? Or like, how do you do that? How do you approach that?
You know what? You just made me realize that I want to add, so let's say I'm going to add another column here, and then I'm going to put it based on the categories that are in OwnersUP. Sales, marketing, systems, retention. So then I can see which ones, what are the projects I'm listing. Because sometimes I list too many systems and I'm not listing as much marketing. So that allows me to kind of see it. So I'm going to add that column in there so I can start categorizing them. And the thing about categorizing, you don't want to go into so many small categories. That's why it's always big ones like marketing. You know, marketing generates your revenue. Sales is when you're talking to prospect. Retention is any work you're doing with your clients. And then systems is optimizing a system like any process you have or creating one. And the reason why they're very broad is because then you can start like going from there into subcategories. But so here's my routine, guys. Every Friday, I spend the time to set up my week to make sure I'm aligned. So anytime I have an idea, like right away, I like to, this is like, instead of writing on a piece of paper, because what ends up happening, I have a bunch of pieces of paper, I just write them down here. So let's say one of them would be like, produce 5 videos. I know I have to get that done. I know it's gonna take me more than an hour. So then I keep writing them down. And then Friday, I take the time to kind of go through it. And then I plan out for my month. But I just keep, even if I have my month plans, I like to just put my my ideas out there so it doesn't take any brain like resources.
Makes sense. So you go through them every Friday, like reviewing the ones you're going to do for the following week, is what you're saying?
I go through them every Friday just so I can, maybe it's just me, but as projects come and ideas come, if I don't put them in one place, then they're in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same. I just use like Google Docs and stuff. Like, it's not as measured as this, so I think it's really interesting because the way I do it is I just use like sticky notes and I use Google Docs basically for like a lot of the stuff. But like this has like a matrix to it, you know, it's more measurable. There's like a formula and all that. So I'm just trying to figure out like that particular questions around like in terms of when you're reviewing a Friday, is it you just look at the overall sense of where your projects are at, or to reflect on the previous week, or to plan for the following week? Like I just wasn't sure what exactly you meant by that.
Okay. So you're right about that. So let me back up. Every month I decide what I'm going to take on, right? Okay. Every time I have an idea, I put it in here. And then every Friday, I like to start going through it, and that's just me, but you can wait at the end of the month. You don't have to do it every Friday, and write down what are the resources needed and everything. So I can start planning ahead. So like if I had to hire somebody, I like to, since I'm moving in a fast pace, I just like to like kind of align like, oh, was I too ambitious for certain goals, or do I have enough time to pick up another goal? Or can I actually take this Facebook marketing funnel, I have all the content, and now literally I've like outsourced everything else to get it done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's just like anything else, guys, it's a habit. And and anytime I want to go to default and be reactive, I got to remind myself being reactive just keeps me busy, but doesn't help me with my return on investment on my time.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else? This is good, guys. I'm going to use this as a lead magnet. So this is perfect, all the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I'll send you guys, I'll send you the sheet. And then I'm also going to add the columns so you guys know the categories and the reason why. So for example, if we're doing this, this would be marketing. This would be marketing category. This would be retention. This would be marketing.
Is there a way to do it so that the actions to take, I mean, should we just, the estimated hour, I wish the actions to take could be more, less of a paragraph. And like, is there any way to do subsets for that so that they're like they've got their own thing, or no?
This is just for you to write them down because you're going to put them in your project management tool to get them done. Remember, it's like, think about it with the art, right? You're kind of sketching things out, and then now you're like, you thought you wanted to, I don't know, draw a circle, and you wanted a circle thing, and it ended up being squares. So this is your place to kind of like flesh it all out and then give the artist the instruction or the designer the instructions.
Do you do that? Did you say that you do that in the same swing? Like, do you do this on one day, you dump it all here on one day, and then another day you take those actions and then schedule them?
Yes.
Okay.
I do it the same day.
Oh, okay.
But you know what I'll do after this call, and when I'm writing up that lead magnet, I will actually put like the rhythm of how I go about things. And then I'll show you an example and then how I put it in ClickUp. Would that work?
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I mean, I think it would be cool to even integrate the actions to take to be automatically dumped in this ClickUp, but maybe I'm just being lazy.
You could do it, I guess, in a type form, but it's kind of like if you carry around a notepad. Same thing. I'm just giving you like exactly what Dan said. He has sticky notes, but instead of putting on sticky notes, because even though he has sticky notes, he still has to put it in whatever project management tool he's using, right? So
I
now,
just use a whiteboard.
well,
I use Scrum,
yeah,
I just
totally.
use a whiteboard or Scrum.
You could do a whiteboard, but then let's say you're managing people, the whiteboard might not work, right?
I mean, like a Scrum, they use it usually in teams, actually, basically just it's like a backlog of different activities that you need to do, and then it's prioritized, like what's in progress and what's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's usually used for developing like software products, but
Yep.
I find it's useful for
a great project management tool you can use that has that process is ClickUp. So instead of having instead of having a whiteboard, let's say you're managing 2 other people, you put it in there.
ClickUps. Like just ClickUps, one word?
ClickUp, UP.
Oh, not plural, just ClickUp.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to have to send you the recording. I just finished pretty much all of it. But if you have questions on project management.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, I'd love to see the recording. Sorry I couldn't come earlier.
Yeah, no worries. It's basically kind of like brain dumping your projects and then going through this system. But what do you usually deal with prioritizing your projects?
Like, what do you mean, our prioritizing project?
There's another Dan on the call who just jumped in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, are you talking to me?
Yeah, you just jumped in.
So how do I prioritize? My projects are sort of, it's feast or famine. And usually with my projects, it's pretty easy since I have usually large times in between projects. But the ones that are, for me, are just, I always put out bids first. And so the highest paying ones tend to get the most amount of my attention. But ironically, the highest.
Samir actually asked this question: what's the difference between goal and projects? You're assuming a project is just client work. I'm thinking project as in the sense of anything that goes in your business, right? That's going to take you more than an hour to get done.
I try to look at it, which ones make my life easier, which ones bring in the most clients, and which ones are going to, I try to evaluate it with whichever ones have the greatest impact long term. That's what I use the Eisenhower decision matrix. That's what I typically try to do. But that all goes out the window as soon as I get busy. So so that's why I'm here.
But yeah, we just have a system in the sense of like what I went through is kind of like what Dan was saying. He has a sticky note. The other Dan, we'll call you Daniel. And he has a sticky note. And then what he does is he puts on his whiteboard and he does a Scrum system, like what's in progress, what's not. So this is a process of when you're kind of brain dumping all your stuff and thinking it all out and prioritizing if you want to take this on the return on your investment on your time. Cool. Did I answer everyone's questions?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Hold on.